Hi everyone, and welcome to the May edition of CyberSciBar. So here we are back once again in the virtual realm, and actually May is officially marks over 1 year since we started hosting all of our events online. Yeah, it's been that long. And even though we are dying to get back into local bars and pubs to see you all in person, it is great that we've actually managed to succeed in hosting our events over the last year. We've covered all sorts of different topics. Just to recap a few, we've had the mathematics of magic, the myths of autism, body modification, tattoos, mental health in green space and how it's improved. That's just to name a few. And one of the great things, the real silver lining that's come out of hosting all our events online is the fact that we've actually been able to record them and add them to the Palace of Science YouTube channel. So if any of the events that you missed over the last year, you can catch up on. And that includes tonight's event as well, as the speaker has very kindly agreed to let us record her talk. So if you know anyone that would be interested in tonight's event or any of our previous events, then you can find them on the Palace of Science YouTube channel. So before I explain how tonight works, in case this is the first Palace of Science CyberSciBar that you have attended, it is worth mentioning that actually this week has been a pretty big week for science communication. The first half of this week has been the Pint of Science Festival. Despite the name, Pint of Science is different, separate from Palace of Science. They had the name first, but we're quite lazy, so it is what it is. So Monday, Tuesday and tonight, they are hosting lots of different science talks. Their festival is online this year as well, and you can catch them on YouTube. Even though we're in sort of direct rivalry at the moment. In fact, coincidentally, tonight, my supervisor is talking about the work we do in our lab on Pint of Science, but I can assure you that the event you are at here right now will be much, much better. That comment might get me fired, but I'm willing to risk it. So tonight's event, it will be an excellent talk that's going to last about 30 minutes. And then we are going to take a 5-minute break in which you lot in the audience can enjoy a topic-themed quiz that we've put together for you. And then we will come back for a question and answer session. So if you have any questions for the speaker tonight, please do stick them in the chat box and we will certainly come to them at the end. So after the talk, I'll be back to tell you a bit more about our next event. But for now, I am going to hand over to our speaker. I have to give a very special thanks to tonight's speaker. She has actually been meeting with me and our technical wizard Ewan for the last 2 days because we've been having some real technical problems, and she's been very patient with us, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So she is a Royal Society and NUAcT Fellow at Newcastle University in the School of Natural and Environmental Sciences. And as we were talking briefly earlier, she mentioned actually that she had moved to Newcastle from a small town in Sweden. And one of the things that she had been recommended and was really looking forward to was the city vibe and how much more vibrant and alive it is. Unfortunately, she moved here just 1 month before the first lockdown. So I'm really disappointed we're not able to give her this welcome in person. But we can do it virtually. So if you'll join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Marina Freitag.
Hi. Can you see me? Just asking, allowing.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. So tonight I will be talking about smart zombies. I will try not to disappoint you about the title a bit, but there will be some zombies in between, I promise about that. So let's get started. You might all know this guy. I hope you don't look at it too much, but let's see, it did contribute to some of human advances. So I would say we managed to control the fire. We went through the Industrial Revolution using actually the energy of coal and oil. And we went to the atomic age as well, but this will have to end all of it, right? So in order for our species to survive, at one point or another, we should become a bit more sustainable. So we should build basically a Dyson sphere around our sun and just use of all of its energy. Let's say we are not quite as far yet, but the first steps have been done. We have developed already quite nice photovoltaic technologies already from the 30s and 40s as Americans. But there are things that coming up also from elsewhere, and first attempts of artificial photosynthesis were made actually by Garrischer in Berlin, and this is where I'm from. So in the late 70s, when everybody was on LSD, he went on actually touch dyes, so the semiconductor surfaces, and dyes really mean dyes. Like you can basically use blueberries for that. He attached it to zinc oxide surfaces and was able to show that actually the stuff kind of works. It just wasn't very efficient. So his postdoc, also from Berlin, who moved on to Switzerland and has also received the Millennium Technology Prize in 2010. And I'm still waiting for this guy to get the Nobel Prize, actually, because it would boost a lot of my papers quite nicely. But what he did, he introduced a very thick, let's say, Mesoporous layer. So instead of just using one crystal, he made a lot of very nice balls of this metal oxide, and this increased the efficiency of these solar cells dramatically. How does this stuff actually looks like? So you have the sensitizing dyes, and this could be any dye, it could be natural dyes. I think carrot juice works nice. During the lockdown, I have tried French wine versus Italian wine, and the French did win. Then there's, of course, the liquid electrolyte, which will transport the charges, but we'll come to this just a little bit later. And the whole secret of the thing is actually titanium dioxide nanoparticles, which you do have everywhere. So every time you brush your teeth, just think about me from now on, because you will have titanium nanoparticles in there. And also, if you eat donuts which have a bit too white covering, it's not sugar, it's titanium dioxide. Bon appetit. Anyway, so let's take a look on this a bit closer. So you have this titanium dioxide layer, and on top you have the dyes, and you have the electrolyte in between, two basically electrodes. And the two electrodes we usually use is just conductive glass. So what happens in any energy system, especially in chemistry, what you want to be as low in energy as possible for all processes to happen. So the electrons will always go down, 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 like a ladder. So what light does, actually, you see this like this little green ball here. So it actually disrupts this pathway. So it introduces energy, and then it goes from low to high, and then it starts over again. So this represents the dye, basically. So the dye absorbs the light, gets excited, introduces an electron into the titanium dioxide. Well, now it's missing a little bit of something, so the redox mediator basically gives an electron back. Both the holes in this case, doesn't matter, positive, negative. So, and once it gets its electrons back from the counter electrode, so just the cathode side, the circuit is kind of complete. So those are just a very basic structure, working principles of dye-sensitized solar cells. So how they look like? This is actually in Switzerland, right next to the office of Michael Gratzel, and they can be very colorful and quite pretty and transparent. It is next to a big convention center. So I know I haven't said much about zombies yet, but I have promised it's coming soon. How I did come in here? Well, in 2017, when I was just a young postdoc in my first postdoc, actually, I discovered that some of those electrolytes, when it dried out, actually became a solid material which transported the charges even better. Then the liquid electrolyte, which is very unusual because every time you usually do this to solar cells like this, they just die. And I don't know why, but we call them zombie solar cells because, first of all, they should be dead, but they're actually working better than before. And how they really look like, and those have been made by my PhD student Hannes. So you have the solar cells, this is how they actually look like, with a very dark dye on it. You introduce our copper electrolytes, the red one, and then they slowly die, and they look really terrible, but they actually work better than before, as I said. So the true development here actually comes out also from the organic dyes, and we are very much mimicking the artificial photosynthesis. So if you take a look on the different colorful bubbles, you can basically modify this as you like, and you can basically tune the absorption properties so they can then absorb light in different environments. So the specialty of our group is to actually absorb as much light as possible from your little lamps. And what we did, we started, of course, with a very small cells and then bigger and bigger in order to increase the area and the power we have out of there. And we used all these organic dyes with the copper electrolytes in the right top corner. So generally what I can say about this is that we use very sustainable materials because it's just basically carbon and some copper, so it's very earth abundant. If you consider, for example, silicon as the most dominant photovoltaic technologies, this technology in comparison really needs really little energy to be produced and to be made. And of course, you could probably make it in every country. You don't need to have a high-tech equipment to work on the solar cells. In any case, combining two of these dyes, matching the spectrum of the sun as much as we could, we got 11.5%, which is, if you do solar cells and you produce a lot of these little squares, about thousands, this is where you do party a lot. But what we notice, and this is there down there in little brackets, is that if you do it on 10% of sun, the efficiency goes up to almost 14%. And we ask ourselves, so what can we use this for? Well, right now we also are in a little technology revolution we're going through. So, and those are IoTs, right? So, and Internet of Things. And there's a lot of boom around them, but not all about this new technology of little sensor wireless devices that will be controlling our life if they aren't already is great. So a couple of questions were actually asked by a very good science paper written by the editors of this journal. Is Internet of Things really an energy boom or bad? Because if you consider that 75 billion of devices will be installed by the next 5 years, they all require energy, right? And I can tell you that 75% of them will be in-house, indoor. Only 25% will be outside. They all need to be powered. Usually it's batteries or it's grid connected. And considering batteries in UK, only 95%. So 95% of batteries are being actually disposed and not in a way they're supposed to be. So only 5% are being truly recycled. So I think the environmental impact of those should be quite considerable. And the next thing, of course, if you can connect the stuff to grid, are you really saving energy or you're just maximizing data collection without its consideration, right? So since our little zombies are so great in ambient and low light conditions, we thought maybe we can connect those two, right? Because the general promise of IoT is actually quite good, right? It's because we humans are living and working in a more and more complex world, we will not be able to optimize our energy consumption by ourselves. There should be some system behind us optimizing every of our steps in order to truly become sustainable. This could be anything from industrial to agriculture to managing our energy resource cars and even our little iPhones has to be made always energy in consideration. So going back to this guy, it's not really available, right, indoors. So, and you have to consider that also the light intensity is very different. If you consider the light spectrum, the sun actually has a very little part of it, right? It's mostly in the visible, so that it's not a coincidence that most plants absorb in the visible, because this is also where most of the energy is available. And they have a small part of infrared and small part of ultraviolet, which we try to protect us from actually by titanium dioxide in our creams. Any case, so if you compare the sunlight spectrum to our lamps indoors, you will see that all light from our light source is actually in the visible, which is not a coincidence, because this is where we can see. So what's the point of making a lamp which produces invisible light, right? So I would say the incandescent light, it doesn't matter. It's just, I think it's no longer being produced because it's mostly just heat. Then we have LEDs, which become for private use very dominant. I would say every time you go to IKEA, you get a very expensive LED lamp, but they almost don't require any energy, right? And then the fluorescent lamps, of course, which are industrial mostly used. So. And then you have to consider your little devices. Just pay attention around you. And if you see this picture, you will see that most of them will be somewhat wireless connected. And if you consider the light intensity indoors, that if you just turn off your little lamp, let's see, maybe it's 5 to 200, your living room maybe 200 lux. And if you go to a nice lit supermarket, we about 1,000 lux. So 1,000 lux is about just 1% of sunlight intensity. This is very important to remember. So it's the energy you have is actually very, very little. But this is where our little bodies come in. So this is screen printed solar cells. We can screen print them in any form possible. Screen print, I really mean screen printing. So if you buy a t-shirt, we pretty much use the same equipment to screen print our solar cells. So we decided to go ahead and take a look how much energy we have actually available from this photovoltaics really, really indoors. And we pretty much perfectly match the lamp spectrum. So we can get up to 34% in biome and efficiency. And this is the most efficient photovoltaic technology indoors at the moment. But let's not talk about efficiencies. Even so, we really like to fight over this stuff in our solar cell community. The actual interesting number is 103.1 microwatts per square centimeters, which means these little IT devices in low power mode, this is about what they require to sleep. And this is just 1 square centimeter of our cell. So if you just increase basically the area, you can consider to do more fancy stuff, right? And this is where you can consider to power and replace batteries in IoT. So now things might look a little bit better. IoT could be a bit more greener, especially considering their communication. So if you consider RFID tags, for example, we can easily power them. So this is no problem. If you go up to passive Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, just 10 square centimeters of the solar cell will be enough to actually power the communication. Even if you go to VLAN or 5G, it's just a matter of increasing the area or just putting a small capacitor in between, right? And you need about 8 hours of charging I would say, if you consider 30% efficiency, of course. And this is where we went on and decided, let's do smart zombies. And smart zombies means in our case that we combine our indoor photovoltaics, our indoor zombies, together with an IoT platform, and we let it perform and collect data and make something more intelligent. So it means it makes predictions. So it learns from the data it receives and produces inferences. So we really go from diffuse light to inferences in one device. So I have not done this by myself because I'm just a chemist, so I can do the materials inside and tend to think of applications, but I actually worked with some very smart people. So Richard Zocher used to be a CTO of Salesforce. Right now, he decided to conquer the world and make a new Google. Good luck to Richard. Then I worked with an engineer from Technical University of Munich who really helped us implementing the artificial intelligence on top. What we did find out is that you need, for one training session, which means you train your little device, about 100 to 150 joules. And each prediction will cost you millijoules per inference. So this is basically nothing. We can do this prediction within seconds and maybe the training within a couple of hours. What we also did, and we really paid attention, that we do actually use machine learning, which is readily available, as well as components which you can buy off the shelf. We did pay attention that we make them as energy efficient as possible. But in the end, we are able to perform machine learning on device and all powered directly by indoor light, which is non-existent energy almost, or energies that nobody considers to be used, right? We do it about, again, 1 millijoule or 2 to the power 15 photons, and with their 64 square centimeters of photovoltaic array, which is about your smartphone. We can train the stuff at 1000 lux. And here, and the accuracy apparently, so in solar cell community, we do like our efficiency, but so do the computer science guys. For them, the accuracy of the machine learning computations is also very important. We get far above 90%. This is what makes them happy. So what we did else, we put some sensors in it, or we faked the sleep intervals. So we used an artificial day, where we turn the lights on and off, and for example measures the temperature, which you can see in blue. And this tells a lot to you about my research group, because you can clearly see 5 days high temperature, which means humans are present. And then there are 2 lazy days in between, and then they come back. You can also clearly see the Thursday before the Fridays start to panic to do some work, and then I think they just gave up. But in any case, so our vision is really, this is the most important thing. So not only do we want to deliver sustainable energy, we also want to use very sustainable materials, which are tunable, which are just made by self-assembly without any solvents, and then made something very intelligent out of it. So I would say here in Newcastle, we are very well supported with a lot of networks, including CAMREC and including RENU PhD program of CDT right here. So I really hope we can work on this in the future. And considering the future, we are pretty much well off with all the predictions. So if you see this graph, right now 2019, and if you go to the future, which will happen, you see a lot of sustainable, right? This is because a lot of people realize that we cannot just implement 75 billion devices and think about not powering them or replacing batteries. Imagine you have to replace batteries to 75 billion devices. So I suspect the reality will look more a bit like this. So of course we have to consider security of wireless networks and who controls them. But very big suspicion is that it will be everywhere with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. That was great. I'm sure our audience has lots of questions, and if you do, please stick them in the chat box, and we will certainly cover those in the question and answer session in a few minutes. In case anyone has to dash off, If you enjoyed tonight's talk, obviously very interesting stuff, a very applied aspect of sort of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, you might be thinking that what does this mean in a broader sense? We actually had one of our lovely audience members requesting a talk about artificial intelligence and the societal aspects, the good things and the bad things and what comes of that. And I have very nobly stepped up and I have found a speaker for next month. So our CyberSciBar next month ties in very nicely with tonight's talk. It's on the 30th of June and it's by Professor John McIntyre from Sunderland University. He has worked with artificial intelligence for over 30 years and he has just become the editor of a new journal that covers artificial intelligence and ethics. So he'll have a lot to discuss regarding the ethics of AI and all the things that Marina has just talked about. So I'll leave you with that for now. We have put together, well, two of our lovely volunteers, Anna and Katie, have put together a quiz for you to enjoy over the break for the next 5 minutes. And of course, if you do have any questions, please stick them in the chat and we'll be back shortly. See you then. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the talk. We've had a few questions coming in for Marina. Thank you very much. That was a really interesting talk. I just wanted to kick off. So I may have missed this, or as we've just been discussing, my sort of chemistry knowledge is not up to scratch. But in terms of these solar cells, so they seem to work better at lower light levels. Is there a cut-off, so sort of above and below, where's there a sort of sweet spot for them to work? Oh, I think we might have lost a bit of connection there.
I'm back. No worries.
Sorry, did you get that question?
So you want to know why our solar cells seem to work better in low light conditions, right?
Yes.
This is correct. First of all, we did two things. We specifically matched low light conditions. So we really optimized our solar cells in spectrum towards the indoor light, for example, or low light condition. And second, traditionally the hybrid solar cells, which also DICEs are very good and low light applications because, for example, silicon is so-called indirect bandgap material, so it really requires a lot of material. You really need a lot of light to make it work. So in low light, actually, silicon doesn't work at all, for example.
So you definitely have an advantage there.
Yeah, I'm the only one, to be honest.
So does this mean, I'm trying to think of sort of light conditions, sort of home versus office. You mentioned you had the picture of the LEDs and the incandescent bulbs. Light conditions in sort of factory floors, it's really bright light. Would you need different solar cells to cover that, or did yours sort of include that range as well?
I would say the best thing would be actually to really optimize towards each of the light sources, because I do also have a little bit of different spectra, which is very easy for us. We just mix and match the dyes we attach to the surface. So it's like playing Lego with colors. Just put dyes which absorb in different regions, and that's it.
That was going to be my next question, because those different light sources had the different wavelengths, and I was wondering,
yes.
So you had to
We
deal
have
with
dyes for every wavelength, so this is no problem.
right. Is it an application that can be used generally for sort of every room, or would you have to take measurements from that particular room when you need those devices?
No, I mean, we usually, if we do report, for example, our efficiencies also, we try to report on 1000 lux and 200 lux. It's because this is the minimum required. This is the lowest energy you're gonna have. So even if you open, for example, you window a little bit, you will have more light, you will have more energy suddenly. So basically, we just want to show this is the minimum of energy available. You have to deal with this.
Right. And I'm guessing the work you're doing now is a continuation, just trying to improve those efficiencies that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a game. I wouldn't call it science; it's engineering at this point, but it's an interesting game. So we are at 35%, and 52 are possible theoretically. So there's still a lot of room to improve.
But it's certainly going well, so that's good.
Yes.
So is this a case of you could put solar panels outside, collect sun's light to power things like inside lights, and then you would then use that light again to power your Internet of Things devices?
Pretty much. You basically recycle light over and over again. I mean, but you have to consider light is really the only form of energy we humans can see. So why not use it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Is this going to contradict? So I know certainly I work at Newcastle University as well. I know there's been a big push for making the campus more green, sustainability, things like corridor lights that now shut off when they've not been used. Is that still the better option, or would it now be better to keep those lights on and use that light to power the devices within the building?
That's why you make them intelligent, so they learn when to turn them on, for example. They can send signals and measure the light intensity. So you don't need, basically, it also makes possible not to waste energy and only to use energy when it's actually available.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's so cool. So you're just sort of developing these systems now. Have you developed anything that can be used sort of in particular settings? Have you had any requests from companies that want to use this technology?
Recently, we were approached to develop, for example, smart tags on like parcels, or for example, for medicine. That's basically as soon as you open a package, you can send a signal that somebody opened it or where it is, and it tells you location, things like that. So it doesn't have to be just energy management, but instead of implementing batteries for one use scenarios, you can also just implement those photovoltaics there, because they're just fewer microns thick, right? It's where you can't even like feel it if you're really screen printed somewhere.
And I know obviously you've agreed to talk to us tonight, so you're obviously keen on doing public engagement, but do you have any devices that are you like showing stuff in schools or touring with like different devices to show what they can do?
So in normal circumstances, we would have workshops available for children of all school ages. Actually, this is usually different parts of our solar cells, and then depending on the age of the students, we can use different dyes. Really small.
Oh, so
Definitely.
I think you're breaking up a little bit there. Can you just repeat that last bit, Marina?
So for small children, we can use very simple dyes from blueberries, for example. And for much older children, we have workshops where we can use fermented grape juice.
I mean, I have to admit, when you said about the French versus Italian wine, were those the only beverages that you tested? Alcoholic beverages, that is?
No, red wine is just a very good method to sensitize or to make the solar cells there. If you don't want to use a more, let's say, sophisticated dyes. That's why it's just a very good absorber. It's already red, right? Red and dark red.
Have you thought of contacting any vineyards and offering to test their vintage for your new technology?
The problem is from a friend of mine, when he mentioned things like that back then, and a winery did call him, and they wanted to know if they rather should produce blueberries for solar cells or keep on doing wine. So they're very confused, but I think we're a little bit further away from that.
I think you should definitely ask for some samples to really solidify the knowledge.
Definitely, I can check the efficiency.
And hopefully when we get back in person, Palace of Science does host an annual festival every year, and I definitely will be asking you to bring along some of those wine samples, and we will test out this technology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that some of the gins which are rather colored could be used too. I'm very happy to test it in any possible bar.
Perfect. You're our ideal speaker. One last question from our audience. So, what would your perfect Internet of Things zombie army consist of in terms of special abilities?
I think if they are truly smart, they start working and learning from each other, and just all by using, of course, indoor light. This is the next thing we work. So we want to make a network of zombies.
That sounds very cool and very terrifying.
Some people, what is the movie again when machines take over the world? With Arnold Schwarzenegger. Sorry.
Terminator.
Terminator, yes. Somebody compared this with our devices. So we have self-sustainable, self-aware devices implementing artificial intelligence that don't need external energy. So those little, monsters, as you said, definitely.
I suppose that leads me on to one last and very important question. Do you get to name any of these devices?
Not really, but maybe we should. We usually try to collect the ones which are very best, but maybe we should give them names by now. It's a good idea.
Yeah, you definitely should. Well, that was great, Marina. That was really interesting. Thank you for a wonderful talk. One thing I held off in the questions there was about talking about this specific technology and how it's going to be used, the ethics side of things, because next month, on the 30th of June, we have Professor John McIntyre, and he's going to be talking all about the ethics relating to artificial intelligence. So you can certainly consider all of the applications that Marina has mentioned, and then really get to learn about how that reflects in the sort of broader society. What's the good things, what's the bad things, how will it affect us in the future? So that's our next event. We will, of course, post about that on our social media. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to find out any more about any of our events, you can go to the Palace of Science webpage. And of course, tonight's event was recorded. Marina very kindly let us record her talk, and that will be added to the Palace of Science YouTube channel. So I think that's everything from me. If you have any comments or questions, or if there is any topics or speakers that you would like to hear from, then please do let us know through social media or our webpage, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us.